Hey everyone, welcome back. It's another edition of the Pick Six. I'm your host, Wobby, inside the Fieldhouse at TCO Performance Center. We got a big game against the Seattle Seahawks, and we have a big episode of the Pick Six to get to. So here we go. Your questions. They start with Victor in Hyattsville, Maryland. Do you think the Vikings have a chance to make it deep into the playoffs and even to the Super Bowl with this offensive line? If the Vikings can do two key things, I think the answer to this question is yes, Victor. They have to stay healthy up front along that offensive line. We've dealt with enough injuries already this season, and they have to find a way to run the ball. A better run-pass balance will help the Vikings control the clock, and it will help the pass protection. If the Vikings can stay healthy and find a way to run the ball, those guys up front can get the job done. Question number 2 comes from Clayton in Louisiana. The Vikings had a good thing with the runs of Dalvin and Latavius early in New England, but why do we seem to abandon the run? I think that's a good question. In hindsight, the Vikings probably wish they would have run the ball a lot more. Dalvin and Latavius have looked good of late, especially Dalvin, who's been ripping off explosive runs. Over the final month of the season, I expect the Vikings to find a way to run the ball more often while maintaining that efficiency. Question number 3 comes from Bennett, Pierre, South Dakota. Dalvin has looked great lately. I know DiFilippo doesn't like to run, but why haven't we used Dalvin more for screen plays? He's got big playability. You're right, Dalvin does have big playability, but you're wrong. John DiFilippo would love to run the ball more. He wants to run the ball as much as anyone else, and I expect the Vikings to keep working on that. But you're right, Dalvin has big playability in the passing game as well as in the running game. The Vikings did throw the ball to Dalvin in New England. He had 8 catches on 10 targets. That's the kind of run-pass balance with Dalvin that the Vikings want to achieve in the final month of the season. The next question comes from Douglas in California. 3 games now, a hurry-up offense has worked. Why not use it? Brady, Rodgers, and other greats use it all the time. I think that's a good idea, Douglas. Using tempo on offense is a good way to do a couple of things. 1, it's a good way to get your offense in rhythm, and 2, it can prevent the defense from substituting if they don't like a matchup. The downside to using tempo on offense is if you're not efficient and you go 3 and out, your defense is on the field a lot quicker, and you want to get those guys some rest. But generally speaking, I like Douglas's idea of using more tempo on offense. The next question comes from Susie, Minneapolis, Minnesota. What improvements need to be made on this team in order for fans to have more faith in the Vikings? Well, I have 3 things in mind, Susie. Number 1, demonstrate more consistency. Remember earlier in the season when the Vikings ripped off 4 wins in 5 weeks? Fans were very confident in the team at that time. Yeah, a loss is going to happen every now and then, but for that 5-week stretch, the Vikings were consistently good. Number 2, run the ball more often and maintain that efficiency. Vikings fans love to see Dalvin and Latavius running for 4, 5, and 6 yards per clip. The Vikings offense can do that. Fans will be much happier. And lastly, how about beat a team with a winning record? The Vikings have not done that yet this season, but they have a chance to do it this week as they go to Seattle to play the Seahawks on Monday night. The final question comes from Carson in Hampton, Iowa. Where is the defense from last year? Will we miss the playoffs if we lose next week? Well, I think the defense has been pretty good over the last 2 months. They did give up 24 points, but that was to Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the Patriots in Foxborough. All in all, it was an okay performance from the defense, and they've been very good since that Week 4 loss to the Rams. I like the way the defense is shaping up. And as for next week, the Vikings want to win the game, go to Seattle and beat a good team that will give them a lot of momentum going forward. But the season is not lost if the Vikings drop this game in Seattle. They have 3 games to go after that. Winning all 3 would get the Vikings to 9 wins, and at 9.5 wins, because of that tie, the Vikings would be a hard team to keep out of the playoffs. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Pick Six. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for submitting your questions. If you want to be involved in next week's episode of the Pick Six, submit your question into the email address at the bottom of the screen. In the meantime, stay tuned to Vikings.com for coverage of the Vikings as they get ready to battle the Seahawks in Seattle. The game is on Monday night. See you next time.